Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of Coach Action Jackson's Client Success Stories. So I'm here with one of my favorite clients, and he's one of my favorite clients not because he's lost the most weight or because he's just got a rippling six-pack, because of his attitude, his energy, the way he's showed up day after day in the program, in the group. And of course, he's made an incredible transformation. He's got great results. He's got all those things too, but it's really his attitude that I love the most, and his love for wine, which we both share. So John, welcome. It's awesome that I'm here with you. And why don't we start back from the beginning, right? Let's start there, and we'll lead up to the amazing success. Yeah. So where did you start before you signed up in the program? Where were you at mentally, physically, and emotionally?
That's a great question. So I've been athletic for years and years and years. I've been a runner for a long time. I, do Peloton, Power Zone challenges, things like that. I played soccer, played volleyball, the whole 9 yards. But I had hit, mid to late 40s. I had kind of almost hit a wall, so to speak. I was running 3, 4, 5 miles a day, 7 days a week. Just trying, I had no plan. I was trying to burn calories. That was all that was in the back of my head, was burn calories, because I was slowly but surely gaining a pound 1 month, 2 pounds the next month, pound and a half after that. And I was up, I think recently, last year and a half, I made it up almost, I was like 219, pushing 220 for a while. And that was with running 4 miles a day, every day. And my joints hurt carrying all that extra weight. I'm 6'2", so I can carry extra weight, but it didn't feel right. But I didn't have any kind of plan or anything like that. I didn't know what was going on, what I was doing wrong, other than I had to burn calories somehow. We got the tonal, started lifting. I started dropping a little bit of weight with that. But again, it was a little bit unfocused. I was scrolling around going, that program looks like fun. And I'd work through that program and, see some good results, but there was no definitive longer range plan involved. And then found out about this program, and the three-pronged approach of the physical and the diet, nutrition, and the mental, emotional, because that was a huge component for me. You talk all the time about the positive self-talk, and I was the opposite of that. I had a lot of really negative self-talk. I would be on the treadmill 4 miles in and literally swearing at myself, just beating myself up left and right. Come on, you're fat and jiggly, keep going, push harder, burn more calories, that kind of thing. And it wasn't a healthy spot physically or mentally, emotionally. And, found out about the program, and it kind of checked all the boxes. And, that's where I kind of made the decision that I had to look at the holistic aspect of everything, and, the top to bottom, not just lift weights or run or something in isolation. It had to be much more whole person.
Tell me a little bit about what's going on mentally there. So you're on the treadmill, you're running, you're beating yourself up. I mean, did you find that seemed to help? Did it work? Obviously I don't think it did, but like, why the negative self-talk like that? And why didn't you ever get out of that loop? Like, how did you get stuck in that loop?
Lifetime experience of being, you want to really go down the rabbit hole. Growing up and everything, I was the stereotypical computer nerd. I was bullied all through high school. I got overweight, and it just kind of grew and consumed me, and I never had any kind of positive direction in that aspect. Snowballed, spiraled. I felt like I was working my ass off and still not seeing any kind of positive results. And it just got me in a worse and worse mood. And every time I got on the treadmill or thought about working out, I did it every day, but it was more about punishing myself for what I was doing that I didn't even know I was doing. So yeah, it was not a happy place.
And what was the trigger then to make a change, to try to do something different? I mean, obviously you got the tonal, you're starting to work out. That's a step in the right direction. You're doing some things positively in the right direction, but what was there a trigger? Was there an event? Was there something like, what was the, all of a sudden, I've got to change this?
Life crisis. I don't know. It's 47, 48 years old, and it doesn't feel like a midlife crisis. But at the same time, in our first conversation, you put me on the spot and made me sweat on the phone, and you were like, "Why do you want to do this?" And I went, And the first thing that clicked in my head was, I've got a house and I take care of the yard, and every summer I mow the grass, and it's 95 degrees in Indiana and humid, and I'm embarrassed to take my shirt off when I mow the grass. And it was such a small, minor thing, and it kind of feeds. It sounds like it's the looks and the aesthetic of it, of physicality, but it was really more the emotional, mental connection between my appearance and just being out in public and being with my wife, and she looks fantastic, and I'm like, oh, there's a lot going on there, with all the spare tire rolls and everything. And it was the tipping point. And we had our first couple of conversations, and it clicked that it was way more than physical. It had to be nutrition, and it had to be the emotional change too, and the mental change.
Yeah, I think so often people think that they could just sit there and think their way, right? They could just think their way into changing their mind, changing the way they feel about themselves, changing their confidence or their self-esteem,
Yeah.
whatever word you want to use. And it's just not possible, right? One of my favorite quotes is, it's so much easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work the opposite way. So
Yeah.
even though you might not quite have your dream perfect physique yet, you're still doing the physical stuff, which is changing then the way you feel about yourself, the emotion, the mindset, all of that. And there's certainly mental work as well, but it's the physical work that's the foundation of
Mhm.
changing the mind, which is kind of interesting, right? It's
Mhm.
different than what a lot of people think. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you start the journey, you're changing the diet. What are some of the things, like obstacle wise, that you hit, that you faced along the way? What were some of your biggest struggles or obstacles, and how did you overcome those?
I love bread and chips. That was probably the not. I mean, you say that jokingly, but yeah, carbs were a big part of it. And seeing the diet plan and starting to go down that path, um, it was really eye opening to see what we talked about the other week on one of the coaching calls of the standard American diet, and that was what I did. I would have a peanut butter sandwich at lunch because I thought that was healthy, because I get the fancy all natural peanut butter at Whole Foods, and it's fresh ground and everything with the oil on top of it. Just to mix it back in, I thought that's got to be healthy, not realizing that it was 700 calories I was putting in at lunch. Forcing myself to get in the habit of tracking everything and weighing everything, and that's still a struggle. I still slip with that sometimes, especially at night. Dinner, I'm like, yeah, that's about 3 ounces. Sure, we'll call it that. And I've gotten better at it because I'll go, yeah, it's about 3 ounces of chicken. I'll put it on the scale. Okay, 3.1. I was pretty close. But just the awakening of learning more about the food and nutrition process, and then having that very, very set window of macros, and plugging it into the app and going, okay, if I have this now, I can't have this later. Or I know I'm going for Mexican later and I want to have a couple of tortilla chips. I'm banking my carbs throughout the day to make up for that, and just balancing everything out. And then the other hard thing was fasting. Not It wasn't as hard as I expected it to be. For years, I had the crutch of, I'm mildly hypoglycemic, and I tell everybody that. Like, I have to eat every 2 hours or I get all wobbly in the head. And now looking back, that was just an excuse so that I could put something in my face every couple of hours. And the first week and a half in the program of working out first thing in the morning with nothing in my stomach, that was tough. There were like a couple of times where I did get kind of wobbly in the head a little bit, but then I adjusted, and now I never get hungry before 10 or 11 in the morning at all, no matter what I do. So it's been interesting seeing that side of the physiological change too.
How did that change the way you think about things when all of a sudden you had something that you told yourself for years and years and years, this sort of excuse that you said, oh, this is the way it is and I can't change it, this sort of limiting belief, right? This ceiling that you put on yourself. And then all of a sudden to just be able to break out of that almost, I mean, not necessarily easily, but relatively easily.
Yeah.
Um, how did that change the way you think about yourself and things and kind of where you're at now?
It's liberating and empowering. I know that no matter what happens with my body as I get older, and coming to the end of the normal program and everything, uh, I'll be totally transparent. I'm still not where I want to be physically. I've still got 5 or 6 pounds that I want to lose. I see some of it, and there's that mental aspect too in there. But the empowering part is I have the tools. I know what I'm doing. Part of it is a matter of how hard do I want to buckle down? Do I want to go on a cut for the next month? Do I want to cut out the wine for the next month and try and drop that 5 or 6 pounds? Or do I want to lose it slower? There's just a lot more control now. And understanding that food is fuel. I don't have to eat as a crutch anymore.
There you go. That's a huge one. I'd say that's one of the biggest limiting beliefs people have. And once we can overcome that, we could reframe, right? To get people to think of food as fuel. All of a sudden, it changes the way you think about what you're putting in your body. And now, voila, bam, now you start to change the foods. You start to eat healthier things. You start to understand macro ratios and stuff because you're doing your tracking. Now things are dialed in and you're able to lose body fat, build muscle, and kind of have the success and the results that you want. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about, before we get to obviously all the great stuff and the amazing results, let's talk about how you were able to be so successful across the program. I know everyone at home is going to want to know this, while drinking so much wine. Every week we do a group coaching call, and this gentleman here always has a nice glass, some expensive bottle of wine.
I should have done this from the cellar.
So how have you been able to do this while still being able to drink so much great wine?
I plan it. I wedge it into the macros. I plan it out, and I mean, realistically, yeah, I kind of do it now almost as a joke of grabbing that half a glass of wine before the coaching calls. That's literally all I drink. I have maybe 4 ounces of wine a day, if that. So a bottle will last me most of a week. But yeah, it is something that I learned through the program again too, that I can eat anything I want as long as it fits correctly into the day. And then the secondary layer of that is fueling the program that I want. If like we've been talking about in text, now I'm in this bulking phase where I need to hit the protein harder, the macros are changing a little bit, things like that. So just making sure that I plan accordingly. Usually what I do is I'll eat my first meal at 11:30 in the morning, and that's pretty light. And then I'll get into that after lunch, mid-afternoon period, and I get ready to have like a protein shake or some chicken or something like that. And then I'll plan out the rest of my day. I'll dump it all in the app so I know exactly what I'm looking at for the next 6 or 7 hours throughout the rest of the day and evening. And yeah, there are times, we go out for our weekly trip to the Mexican place. I'm like, okay, I'm out of macros, having wine tomorrow instead of tonight, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So it's moving it around, understanding macros, making adjustments, and keeping in moderation, right? Which
Yeah,
I'd
absolutely.
say moderation is a really great thing to understand for a lot of people, because you can have, like to your point, you can have anything you want as long as you moderate it and you fit it in, right? Because if you just give yourself a free bill, which is what most, the standard American diet is, eat as much as you want, anytime you want, anything you want, doesn't work. So let's talk a little bit about the results. I have some numbers here. I'll go through a quick, run of the stats just so people get an understanding of where you were at, where you got to. So starting weight was 215, but we'll throw in a caveat. You end up having surgery right? In the middle of the program, you lose weight, then gain a bunch of weight back, and you gain back up to 208, and then finish the program at 191. So 24 total pounds lost. We'll jump into your surgery and how you manage that. Body fat starting was around 22%. You got down to 18 and a half, somewhere in there. So anywhere between 3.5% and 4% body fat lost. Starting measurement on your waist was 37.75. You got that down to 34.5. So 3.25 inches lost off your waist. But here's the big one. Here's one that I think just is going to blow everything else out of the water. Starting strength score 800, ending strength score 1151, increase of 351 points or 44%. Boom, that is bananas, John. That's just an incredible number. So congratulations on all the results there. Great successes. I mean, awesome numbers. Let's dive into how you feel now. Where are you at today?
Where am I at today? My wife and I went on a short vacation about a month ago, 3-4 weeks ago. And so I was working out in the hotel gym in Long Beach. And it was one of those gyms that has all the angled mirrors. So you end up catching glimpses of movement. And I'm doing cable work and dumbbells and whatnot. And I saw movement. I kind of glanced in the middle of the rep thinking, damn, that guy's ripped. No, it was me. I don't recognize myself anymore. And, everything circles back to me, to the mental and emotional aspect of it. And understanding, I always had this vision in my head of being quote unquote in shape. And one of the things the program has taught me is that there's not really an end point. There's not really there can be defined goals. Yeah, you want to reach a certain weight or a certain body fat percentage or whatever. But there's always going to be something that, okay, I can shift focus to this now. I can shift focus to that now. This is where I want to aim for this piece and that piece. But yeah, just realizing, yeah, I mean, it's stupid. I'll take a shower. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. And I catch my wife walking past me and she's like, I don't even recognize you anymore. It's just, it's mind boggling after 47 years of wanting to do that and not knowing how, that it's achieved and in the process of achieving.
And what's the self-talk like upstairs?
I never focused on changing it. And I realized, we set up the appointment for this and I started really thinking back about it, and it's totally different now. The mental, emotional aspect of everything is, I look at the places that I still want to work on, that 4 or 5 pounds of spare, a little bit of spare tire that's still left, that kind of thing. And instead of the really, really negative, trying to drive myself forward more and work harder, it's, okay, well, that's looking a lot better than it used to. What do we need to do to keep moving that in the right direction?
Wow, that's incredible, John. It's definitely making me emotional thinking about your journey, what you said earlier about being this kid, the negative self-talk, beating yourself up. I mean, I can relate so much. I was the same kind of way, computer nerd. And now here you are, you're just breaking through limitations, physically better than ever, mentally better than ever, emotionally better than ever. What an incredible journey, man. Congratulations, my friend. I'm so proud of you, because like I said, not only did you show up constantly, but you always showed up with such a positive attitude. You showed up with energy, with enthusiasm. You did everything I asked and more. And you were just such an incredible contributor to the entire community. So thank you again so much, my friend.
Oh, thank you. And that the point you made earlier is interesting too, of showing up and figuring out how to focus on specific things, because I got a new piece of mesh embedded in my abdomen halfway through the program.
That's right.
I remember our very first conversation on the phone. I could tell you were like, this guy doesn't want to work with me, because I was like, 2 days ago, I got diagnosed with an inguinal hernia. Should I start the program? And you're like, oh God, really? I could tell that was going through the back of your head. And you're like, well, we can work around that. And then we kind of got into it. And yeah, it was, when did I start? The beginning of September, and Halloween, I had the surgery. So it was getting worse and worse through the first 2 phases. And we just had to adapt some of the exercises. It got to the point where I forget which one was the worst. Squats, I think, were pretty bad. And every time I do one, it would pop out and I just shove it back in and keep going. And, figuring out how to work around that, and then having the surgery, and mentally that was hard. I knew it was coming. I kind of prepared myself for it. I gained 11 pounds in 1.5 days. I know you and I talked about that, and it was there was that, it erased everything. It erased everything I had gained in 2 months in 1.5 days, 18 hours. But the positive changes, knowing that, being able to look at it objectively. I just had surgery. It's all the water weight gain and all the IVs and all that stuff. And knowing that even though I was going to come out of that few days of recovery with a couple extra pounds, I had the tools. I had the knowledge and the understanding of what to do to get right back on track. And yeah, I think I took 1.5 days to rest, 2 days to rest, and then I was back at it, lifting again, and just working around it. So you just keep moving forward.
How did you recover so quickly from that? Because a lot of people would take that as either an excuse, a sign from God or the universe that this is not meant to be. And that would be the reason why they wouldn't continue. And so the reason that I was kind of like, oh man, like I was a little bit, I wouldn't say I was hesitant. I was just taken back, where I thought, this is going to be one of those things that I don't know if he can recover from, because I didn't know you at the time, right? So I'm trying to make a judgment based on all the other people I had worked with. And most people use that as an excuse not to continue. But you did it. You persevered. You had progress, right? You got your weight down. You were doing good. Boom, things jump up. It looks bleak. It looks bad. It looks like, oh my God, this might not be something that you come back from. And you were right back on it, and then crushed it, just knocked it out of the park. How did you manage to do that?
That, about me, that at least has always been a pretty positive thing. I used to run a lot of Spartan races and things like that. So I'm used to getting beat up and working around pain. But I've always said that about myself: I'm not going to be the fastest, I'm not going to be the strongest, but I'm going to be the last one standing. I'm going to keep going no matter what. And when I ran Spartans, I was on course one time for 7.5, 8 hours over the course of 14.5 miles up the side of a mountain in California. And you just keep going and going and going. And so knowing that, when I played soccer, I played in goal, and I finished the match on what turned out to be a broken leg. It hurt, and there was a big swelling on it. I didn't think anything of it. I just tried to protect that side of it. So that's just been always part of my work ethic around athletics, is figuring out, if something is broken or is hanging off the wrong direction, figure out what still works, and work that and start pressing through. And knowing the difference between hurt and injured helps a lot too. With the hernia and the recovery there, I knew what to stay away from, and I checked in with my doctors too. There was a stretch of about a week where I was having some pain, and they didn't know if I had torn a stitch loose. And so I called the doctor, and I was like, "Is this normal? I'm starting to lift again. I want to do this correctly and not, make it worse or re-injure myself." He's like, "Totally fine. Go to it." Right on, jacked up another 10 pounds on the next lift.
Fantastic. You have the grit, my friend. Book on my bookshelf right there. It's called Grit by Angela Duckworth. And she's an incredible researcher. And what she found after doing all this research with the military and like Navy SEALs and even, like third grade students is that grit is what highest performers, the highest achievers in the world have. And you definitely have that, my friend. So thank you so much for all your hard work, all the effort. I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for how far you've come, but also where you can go from here. To your point earlier, there's no destination in this. Health and fitness is a for life thing. You just keep doing it, because we're all fighting the battle against gravity, against disease, against age. We're all fighting a losing battle with that. And our goal is just to stay and to keep fighting for as long as we can. And you're a prime example of that. You're a fighter, and it's been such an honor and a pleasure to work with you, my friend. I'm really, really grateful that our paths crossed and that we got to work together. So, any final thoughts you'd like to throw out there for people watching at home?
No, if you're on the fence about the tonal or the program, or even just changing your life to, make a better path, no matter how old you are, it's a lot of, there's a beard there. It's just all white and gray. I'm 48 years old and in the best shape of my life. And getting better every day. There's no wrong time to start.
Yeah, there's an old saying that says the best time to start was like 20 years ago. Second best time to start is today.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, John. It's been such a pleasure. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this and your story out there. I think it's an important one because, again, you're such an inspiration. And man, what an incredible journey you've been on. And it's just going to keep going. So thank you. Thank you again, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.